Yes, hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for coming here. I hope you had a great night last night at the party. Today, we're going to talk about user acceptance and performance testing using two tools that we use internally at Tableau and found very useful. And we are also making them available for you. My name is Ionuț Grădinaru, and I'm a senior software engineer at Tableau in the performance test tools. And I've been with Tableau for 2 years now, and I've been for the whole time I've been the lead developer on Scout, which is one of the tools that we're going to present. And my friend here, Uma, he's working on the other tool that we're going to present, and he's my teammate in the performance tools team.
Cool. Hey, my name is Umapati. I've been at Tableau for 3.5 years, and this is my 4th Tableau conference. Each year, I've taken different roles in the conference. I've been a room host, registration, behind the kiosk, and this time I'm very excited to be a speaker. In my initial years at Tableau, I worked on some awesome features, but later moved on to work on my passion, which is to build tools to debug, troubleshoot, and reproduce issues with Tableau. And that's how we came up with the idea of ReplayTool, which I'm going to present today. And we use this tool internally at Tableau, and we have seen good value, and we think that customers will also benefit from this. 1 second, sorry. Okay. So we're all here because we know that validating your Tableau server after making changes is hard. When you make changes, you would be worried if everything would work after you make the changes. Another thing that you would worry would be if everything would perform better. In Tableau world, this means, will my workbook still work? Will my workbook be slower or faster? Let me go through a list of scenarios, typical scenarios that might affect the usability and then performance of your Tableau server. So upgrade, moving from one Tableau version to another. Lots of changes that could affect how your Tableau server has been performing. Topology changes. You add worker, remove worker, move processes around. It might affect the performance of how your server performs. Data source changes. Say you want to upgrade to the latest SQL server, and you're worried if the workbooks using the data source might work or not after the upgrade. And authentication change. Say, for example, you want to add single sign-on like curve rows, and if it's not set up properly, then it could break connection for many of your users. We want you to have the freedom to make all these changes, and by using these tools, it will definitely help you.
Okay, so today we're going to discuss about these two tools, Scout and ReplayTool. We're going to present to you what the tools are, what they do, how we think they can help you, and more importantly, we're going to do a real-life demo of these tools in action. So in the end, we're going to keep time for Q&A, but because this is an advanced session and there's not extremely big crowd, we can also do it a little bit more interactive. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. We're going to try to keep also some time for Q&A at the end. And by the way, I hope you really like the icons there. Uma is the artist in our team. He created these in Paint.
Yeah, MS Paint is awesome, right? Thank you. Even if you don't like the tool, if you like the icon, I'll be happy.
Yes. So first tool that we're going to discuss today is Scout. We released Scout at the conference last year in Austin, and we got a lot of feedback afterwards, during the session and afterwards, where people asked us questions about if this tool kind of works in such a way for doing performance testing, especially from the point of view of perceived user performance testing. why can't it be used for user acceptance and regression testing? And so we made some changes in the tool, and this year we're going to present it more from this perspective, as user acceptance as a regression tool, though it still does all the performance things that we already talked about. So let's go and see what Scout is. So that's the UI for Scout. Scout is an exploratory user acceptance and performance testing tool. So Scout does the heavy lifting of loading workbooks, interacting with them, gathering all the performance metrics, screenshots, whatnot, and you would be left just analyzing the results. And we know that you're the best at that. So how does this happen? So Scout creates synthetic traffic. Scout goes on your server, discovers the data on the server, and then starts interacting with the data as if it would be a normal user. Exactly what I said. One thing is that as a user, it understands what the workbook is. So it will interact in a way that is correct for the state of the workbook. And we also think that Scout can help you. Why do you? Oh, it's not working.
Sorry,
Yeah.
there is a
So we have
pop-up for some reason.
Can you close that?
I'm trying to.
You might need some technical help. Yeah.
Okay, got it. We closed it.
I think we're good now. We are. Yeah.
Our previous speaker warned us that there's some pop-up coming. Okay.
Okay. So Scout executes these. We call them interactions. They're user actions. They are executed in a sequence. And that sequence, if the underlying data doesn't change, that sequence should remain the same. There's different things. You can also randomize a little bit. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. That makes Scout a very good tool if you're doing any kind of A/B comparison. So you run a run with A, and then you do some changes, you run the second run. As long as the data on the server is the same, Scout will do exactly the same sequence of actions. And then you have the results, you can compare them. Scout gathers, for each of these interactions, is going to gather screenshots, is going to gather performance metrics, and pass-fail rates. And we think it's easy to use. It's very configurable. We have a lot of information on how to configure it on the community portal where the tool is released. It can be run with the UI, or it can be run from the command line. So you can also run it as a scheduled task or something. OK, with that, before going at the demo, let me tell you what's new from last year. Since we released Scout last year at TC, I wanted to kind of tell you what was the progress in it. So the main things that we receive feedback, desires for clients using it, was the support for sites and projects. The first version was working only on default, and people have lots of sites and lots of projects they wanted to run specifically on something. Then the support for online. And the third one is we made it way easier for people to do A/B comparisons, and we also built a viz, like a pre-built viz to analyze A/B data. And of course, we did a lot of smaller improvements, and we fixed bugs that were communicated to us. OK, with that, I'm going to jump into the demo. So for that, I need to do some. OK, we are here. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the setup here. This is, on my laptop, I have a Tableau Server installed. I have a SQL Server. I have some workbooks that are based on tables that are on the SQL Server. And the scenario that I'm trying to show you, as I said at the beginning, it's a real-life scenario. So the scenario that I'm trying to show you is what would happen if somebody, without knowing that some tables are in a data source, a live data source in a workbook, they make some changes in the DB. How Scout can catch this. So let me just start a Scout run, which would be the A run. All right? So let me go a little bit through the settings. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're all very well documented on the community portal, both for the UI and the command line. So here we have the name of the host. I'm running on localhost. The server is on-prem. I put here some username and password. Do not use 3-letter password. Those are not good. I'm going to do automatic discovery of the content on the server. You can also provide a URL list if you want to limit to certain work or views. I'm going to run on this specific site to show that the site really works. You don't need to believe me. We have a project. And then I'm going to use a discovery order of the most used workbooks. It can also do alphabetical order. It doesn't really matter much in this case because I only have a couple of workbooks for the demo. But this is an option for you, especially if you want, because the next option is to limit the count. So if I say to run on 10 workbooks and I say in the usage order, it's going to pick the 10 most popular workbooks. And I'm going to jump over the rest of the options. Here there's two flows, all interactions or random. That's where I was saying that there is some randomization that can be introduced, but even there's a seed that can make you have the same sequence of random interactions. And we're going to save screenshots, and here's the place where the results are going to be saved. And with that, we're going to start the run. By the way, this run is completely live, so things might go south. So bear with me. So what Scout is doing right now, it's sending REST APIs, calls to the server, in order to query the data that's on your server, the discovery part. Now it fired up Chrome, logs into the server, goes to the site and the project that was specified, and it's going to start loading the workbooks, hopefully. And yes, they are loading. And you see here that it's starting to doing interactions. So on the first workbook, it selected marks. Again, here is going to select marks. And then it's going to start fiddling with the categorical filters and go from one worksheet to the other inside the dashboard. It can also zoom in, zoom out in maps. And what we do here is Scout intercepts the communication between the browser and the server. And in the same way as the product understands what to render on the page, exactly that's how Scout knows how to interact. So if the browser gets so the server sends back to the browser something called the presentation model. That presentation model tells the browser, hey, there are 15 marks to show. There are 3 categorical filters, and these are the values. So Scout intercepts that communication, understands the presentation model, and that's how we know that, OK, so I can select marks. I can change a filter. I can zoom in because there's a map there. OK, so the run is done. I see, I told you it's a live demo. I see a failed interaction. We're going to take a look to see what that is. The results are saved at this location, and I have an easy way looking at the results in Tableau, of course. And I'm really curious now, what was that interaction? Maybe something timed out, but we'll see. OK, so what we see here is performance data. We are seeing the slowest workbooks for loading. And if I go here, I see that Superstore load viz was the smallest, took like 3 seconds and almost 4 seconds. And it's normal because that's kind of a bigger dashboard that has a lot of data, a lot of rendering. So I'm going to jump and get more details for this specific workbook. And here I can see all the interaction that happened on this workbook, because this workbook has multiple worksheets. And I can even go see this is the load viz interaction for the overview worksheet of this workbook. What you see down here is a list of iterations. And I didn't touch about that. There was another option on Scout that is telling you how many times to execute. For user acceptance testing, it doesn't really make much sense to kind of run n number of iterations, but for performance, especially because what Scout is doing is perceived user performance. So it loads everything in the browser. It exercises the network, the JavaScript rendering, the browser latency. There's going to be noise. So you have more runs, you reduce the noise, an aberration in the results. And let me see something interesting here. Let's see what happened. So it looks like this interaction timed out. Yeah, so now we know. One of the interactions timed out. OK, let's now do, so that pop-up with the error appeared again. What we're going to do now is, let's say the guy that didn't know the table was related goes and makes a change in SQL directly. Again, that's probably not a good thing to do during live demos, but yeah, let's see how that's going to work. All right, so I just messed up the name of a table. And now, first of all, I want to check to see that what I did really affected the server. OK, I log in with my super strong password and go to the project, go to this workbook, which is built based on the table. And guess what? It's working. And you might wonder, hey, but didn't you just change the name? Server is smart enough to cache the data. Like, the server will not do a live request to your DB for every single interaction. But if I click refresh, this should force a denial of the cache, a bypass of the cache. So if everything goes fine, yes, and I get the error. Unable to connect to data source, and is complaining that some table is no longer there. OK, so I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go back to Scout. And this is another option that we added this year. It's refresh cache. So pretty much is telling Scout to append something to the query string to instruct the server to ignore the cache and hit the DB. OK, let's run it again. OK, so should be doing the same thing. I just want to take a look to make sure that when it hits the first work view, it theoretically should detect the failure. OK. All right. So as I was telling you, and we got a ton of questions last year about this, and we do sometimes demos to customers. I'm getting a lot of questions about, OK, so you save screenshots for all these interactions, one screenshot per each interaction. And people are saying, OK, so can't we use this to do more advanced validation? Let's say we validated the data didn't change. We validate that something else didn't happen. Yeah, the data is there. You have all the screenshots. And there are tools outside of Tableau that you can install on-prem, on the cloud. They can do image comparison, and some of them are extremely advanced. You can say ignore this part or have certain percentage of deviation. So you can do it. In the past, with image comparison, we've had noise because of, a cursor was there, resolution was not good. So you might get false positive, but it's an option. All right, so let's open this result now. And I'm not going to look at the performance data anymore because we already kind of went through that, and I wouldn't be expecting much major change here. I'm going to look at the error summary. And the error summary this time is no longer saying timeout as the first time, which was unexpected. But it's saying the server load interaction failed with a data source error. And if I click here, I can even see the screenshot. So this is what happened. But wait, there's more. as I said, we also added some feature to make it easier for you to do A/B comparison. So I'm gonna select the 2 runs. Bear with me a little bit here until I find my place into this like really long path. This was the first run. And then I'm gonna do exactly the same clicking around to find the second one. And this is the second run. And compare. Again, all the data is there. You can build your own, way better than mine, vizzes. But this is what we have pre-built. In fact, in the end, Scout saves the results file as CSV format with all the information you need, timings, links, everything, and you can mine the data however you want. But this is what we built. So we have here first performance data. So what was the difference between the first run and the second run is something like 0.18 seconds, or like 184 milliseconds or something. And then you can dig deeper and see per each interaction what was faster, what was slower between the 2 runs, and then even go further and have this data shown at the level of each interaction. And if you have the same interaction on the same page, then we have an index, and it can be with multiple iterations too. But the part that I wanted to discuss more is this. So here what you see is that there was an error in run A and there was an error in run B. But the errors are different. That's why they're showing with red here. They're different errors. And I wanted to kind of highlight this part. This is, no, this is the timeout, in fact. OK, so I'm not going to highlight that. I'm going to highlight this one. So here's how the workbook looked on run A. And here's how the workbook looked on run B. And you can easily see something went wrong, and I look here, and the name of the table is messed up, which caused an error connecting to the data source. With that, we are done with the Scout demo. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation.
We have 2 questions there.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
So the question was if there's date information to know if the performance increases or decreases. Yeah, so in fact, at Tableau, we kind of take this data and push it into our DB, and then we can track results in time and whatnot. But all the data is in the CSV. We have the start time of each interaction, and then we have the elapsed time. And we also have a GUI that's that tracks from one run to another. As long as it's the same data, it's going to be the same GUID, so they can be joined together. And then there's also the URL that was hit, the screenshot, even the command that was sent to the server. So there's a lot of data that can be mined there. And of course, this data can be pushed into a DB, and then you can have like, you know, like a trend over time and whatnot. Yes, yes, please. So this tool is released as under MIT license, but is not an open source tool. We release only the binaries. Because, and that's, sorry, and that is because of that dependency on the presentation model. If the presentation model might change from release to release. The commands that we sent, again, are part of the contract between the browser code and the server code, and they're not like an API that is published somewhere. Yeah? Are you able to set URL parameters? Yes. If you do a URL list, you don't do discovery, let's say, you can put whatever you want in the URL.
We'll take one more question and then answer the rest on Q&A.
Yeah, I think you were first, right? Yeah.
No. Well, let's take 2.
Sorry? Can I make that? Oh, yeah, I said, so it can run from command line, and you can run it as a scheduled task.
Just like a batch file or something like that?
Yeah. All the options that are available on the UI, they're also available on command line. So you can execute it as a batch, or you can just run it as a scheduled task. And in fact, we run these in the lab without any UI.
At one stage you had to enter in a username and password. Is that just because you don't have active directory authentication set up?
Yes, so we're gonna take more questions at Q&A, but this tool for now only supports server authentication. This is one of the biggest requests, and we're gonna be working on that soon.
We'll take questions from this
Okay,
gentleman.
yeah,
And then.
yeah.
If the data were to come back in the 2 different runs, would that be flagged?
No. Again, that was what I was saying, that Scout by itself does not validate data, does not validate if the things render properly, validates server errors. We are planning to add more validation, like plugin validation style, but for now, it's server exceptions, alerts, JavaScript alerts, and server errors. Okay, so let me jump over.
We'll take more questions during the Q&A, please.
At Q&A, and then we can hang out after Q&A and discuss more. So I just wanted here, we went through a little bit to the Scout's results. I'm not going to go into this much. I just wanted to show you how a viz looks when you do like thousands or tens of thousands of interactions and you have like hundreds of workbooks, like a bigger run that we do internal Tableau. And this is an A/B comparison for a bigger run that we do internal Tableau, and we see like big regressions for some workbooks, big improvements for others. Again, I wanted to show you how it looks when you have like hundreds of workbooks. One thing that I wanted to know before switching to Uma is that this tool, we really use it at Tableau. We use it to validate server online. We use it to validate server on AWS, server on Linux. We use it to validate Hyper. In fact, we are right now on loan to the Hyper team to work on their performance validation. With that, I'm going to give it to Uma, who's going to talk about a really, really cool tool called ReplayTool.
Cool. Well, thanks, Janet. Since the release of Scout last year on TC, Janet has been helping many of the internal and external customers, and is really passionate about the space. Now, let's talk about ReplayTool. ReplayTool can help in doing user acceptance and performance testing as well. So what is ReplayTool? ReplayTool uses Tableau Server logs to play back the real traffic back to the server. This is the main difference between Scout and ReplayTool. Scout is a synthetic traffic. It understands the contents and then generates the traffic, whereas ReplayTool uses the real user traffic and plays it back onto the server. It plays back the Viz interaction sessions, that is loading the Viz and then interacting with it, selecting marks, applying filters, zooming in, things like that. It can play back single or multiple sessions. This is another difference between Scout and ReplayTool. Scout is a single user session only. With the browser, it's one user opening the Viz, whereas the ReplayTool can open multiple sessions as seen by the server. At some point in your server, if there are 5 people interacting with it, it'll open 5 threads, and all of that would be hitting your server. So how does this work? For this, let me laser pointer. Okay. So when users interact with Tableau Server, everything gets recorded in the logs. An admin can take this log and use another tool called LogShark, which was released last year during TC, which processes these logs and builds wizards for various processes of Tableau Server. And ReplayTool is one of the plugins. ReplayTool plugin takes these logs and reconstructs the browser sessions. That is the URL, the username, the interactions that it performed, and the time in which all these actions happened. Using this, we can replay exactly what the user did. So you can load the replay file using the tool ReplayTool, and then play it back, point it to the Tableau Server, which has the contents, and see how your Tableau Server performs, and find regressions and performance issues doing that. So how to run ReplayTool? There are two ways, the Replay UI and command line. You would use the Replay UI while you want to filter down the traffic. Say you have a day's worth of logs and you want to replay only the most traffic time, say 9 to 5 or 9 to 12. You might want to filter it down. And there are a lot of other options. And you would use the command line for regression testing if you want to do an automated one. With that, let me jump to the demo as well. Janet, can you switch it,
Yeah,
please?
sorry.
Thanks.
Yes.
So first thing I mentioned is you need to generate a replay file, right? For that, you use the tool called Logshark. I don't know if you can see it, but this is logshark.exe, and here is the zip file from your Tableau server. And Logshark processes these logs and then runs various plugins, Apache, SQL Server, Backgrounder. All this produces various wizards that you can use for performance analysis. And replay is one of the plugins, and here's a replay file. Yeah. And if you go into the output folder here, and yeah, you have all these wizards, and you have the replay file as well. Now let me open ReplayTool. Here's a batch script to open it. And okay. I'm going to use replay file that I prepared for the demo. Okay. So I load the replay file. This is for the this was used. This is for I prepared it for the demo. It has about 8 sessions. And then you want to point it to the Tableau server where you want this traffic to be replayed. Localhost. For the first demo, I'm going to show you. So as I said, replay can play back single session or multiple session. For a single session, you might want to play back the user actions in browser. See how or what happened. If there are any issues, you can use this option to debug. So I selected one of the sessions here. It applied the filters here for user 2. And I'm going to click replay. And wish me luck as well. Okay. So right now it's connecting to the Tableau server. It used the credentials from the config file. And yeah, it opened the URL that was in the file. That was for the session. And now it is interacting with it. This is the actual actions performed by the user, and it's doing it with the same duration that the user took. So with this, you can play back that, and if user had any issues during some connection, say you moved from one wiz to another and the data source did not work, you can reproduce this issue and see what happened and then debug it for the user. So as you can see, there are various interactions that happen, selecting marks, applying filters, switching from one wiz to another. And I think this is all, okay, it's kind of complete right now. So all the interactions, whatever the user performed. and it writes the results to an output directory, which you can see in the command line tool. Yeah, it says this is the output location. But this is not the main scenario of how you would use the replay tool. You want to see how your server performs under the actual load. You want multiple users hitting your Tableau server at the same time. For that, I'm going to remove all these filters and select HTTP option. This is the browserless traffic. So it's going to send the traffic and then a request to the server, and the server will respond as if it's coming from the browser. To show you what happens, I'm going to open Fiddler so that you can see the traffic. And also, I want to send this traffic through the proxy. You don't need to do this. You could use it for debugging. And I'm not going to upgrade it right now. No. And let me click replay. So as you can see, right now it started the first session, and it's starting a second session. It's going to wait for some time based on, and then start doing the interactions. So it's running multiple sessions at the same time, so replaying the exact traffic that was seen by your server. While it's doing this, let me open another window and show you how replay performed. We'll show you a real traffic from our production environment. And also explain the other features of ReplayTool. So the traffic is still going on for the previous one. This is the replay file from our production environment, which is about 3 to 4 hours. I filtered down to 3 to 4 hours. And it has about 707 sessions. That's what it says here. And I want to. So the tool uses username and password. If there's single sign-on, it'll first try to connect. And if it doesn't, then it'll use the username and password from the, for the HTTP option, no, it uses the username and password to connect to the Tableau server.
But where does it store password? I mean, it's trying to do a simulate a connection of alpha for user. There won't be a password, right?
You need to have a test account that has access to all these wizards that you need to run as. You cannot run it as an actual user, but you can reproduce what the actual user did. I'll take the rest of the questions after the demo, please. Thank you. And so you can select the HTTP option here I think I got it. Here what I want to show is how to alter the traffic. This is a production traffic, and taken from Monday, one of the Mondays, and we were testing Linux deployment. And we moved from a Windows production environment to a Linux production environment. And we wanted to run the same traffic and see how the server performs, how the response rate is, if there are any issues. And somebody brought up saying, well, Monday's traffic is not high enough. Maybe we should use Friday's traffic. And here's the simple way to increase the load. All I did was multiply this traffic by 2, alter, and then save the file. So now, from 700, you have 1,400 sessions happening at the same time. So you basically increase the load by 2 times from actual traffic, and you can verify various load conditions here. Now, this is cool, not because I wrote it, because I used it, and it's been really valuable. Sometimes, I even take traffic from Scout, which is a single user session, multiply it by 4 to simulate 4 users interacting at the same time, 5 users, and see how the server performs. And there are other options. You can.
You have a question?
We'll take the question in a few minutes, please. Okay. There are other options. You could run it at a certain traffic rate. Say you want to see how your server performs. If there's 10 users interacting, you'll take the same session with all the interactions, but you want to see, what if 10 people were interacting per minute. You could use this traffic rate number here to put whatever number and then see how your server scales. And with that, the main goal of multiplying traffic that I did not talk about is, if you have your organization with 30 people and you want to scale it up, then you want to see how your server performs when you provide access to more users. You could use this. If the pattern of access is same, then you could use this to generate that kind of load and see how your server performs. It doesn't have to be a whole number. You can also say, what if 50% more people use? Then you could just say 1.5 and then alter, and you will get the traffic for that. So with that, did I miss anything?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So with that, I'll jump back to the presentation.
Yeah, let me just do this. Dance a little bit.
Yeah. So you saw how you can run ReplayTool. Now, how do you view the results of it? There are 2 ways. Replay visits. So replay, when it runs, it writes the data onto a CSV file, very similar to Scout. And another way is to use LogShark. So when you replay the actual traffic, it has, again, written all the sessions and the interactions back to the server. You could take the log and process it using LogShark. I'll explain a bit more detail about that. So here is how you would use a replay viz. As I said, the replayer writes the results to a replay.csv file. It writes the URL that was accessed, and the interactions, number of failed interactions, status of page load, the duration of the page load, and a unique Apache access ID, which we use for correlating run A with run B when you want to do A/B comparison. Here is a result. I'm not sure how well you can see this here, but it's the workbooks and then the worksheets. And this is about 2 to 3 hours of run. This is a timeline of it. And you can see that some of the visits have been opened multiple times by various users. And the reds are where the load failed, load of a viz failed. By the way, your results will not look this bad. This is a test environment where we were testing some configuration. So here you can see some of the visits never loaded. So this is a big red mark that you need to look at. Some of them were taking much longer. So the size of each mark represents the load time. And towards the end, something happened to the server. There were more errors for the user. So all this is something that you need to debug. And the next slide. Okay, so here is a viz for doing an A/B comparison. The URLs, the run A, and then run B. It's showing how long it took for page load. As you can see, in run B, many visits were slower than run A, something that you need to debug. You need to see what changes you made and see if those changes are something that you want. And here is LogShark, as I said, another way to visualize your results. Here what it's showing is the Apache viz, showing the page load time. It's a really small screenshot, but here is the average line. And over here it's showing the number of sessions for each hour, and then the red here shows the failures as well. And then these are all the top workbooks accessed during the session. All right, so this is just a recap. You could use ReplayTool for user acceptance and performance testing. You could use it for verifying, measuring a real-world multi-user load condition. You could use it to reproduce and troubleshoot individual sessions. Mainly, you could use it for multiplying your traffic to simulate various conditions and see how your server performs. So ReplayTool doesn't replay everything on your Tableau server. It replays the viz load sessions only, like loading the viz, interacting with it. There are other things happening on the server, background or publishing of viz, the administrative tasks. These things you need to account and see how your, when you take a backup of your actual Tableau server, alerts and backgrounders, these are still scheduled, so that traffic might be happening anyway. But the main traffic is the users interacting, and Replay takes care of it. Yep.
Okay, so where can you get more info and the tools? These are the links for the tools on Community Portal, Scout and ReplayTool. You can download the tools. For Scout, we have the version 1, 1.1, 1.2. We have their documentation. We have small video on kind of the demo that we did last year. You can provide comments, ask questions there. That's the best way to kind of discuss about these tools, report things that are not working, save this, helps you in any way. So one thing that we're going to go fast through this. This is going to be in the deck. I think this is very important. This shows all the tools that we have for released as open source outside of Tableau, internal tools that we think customers can get value from. Here we have TabJolt, which is the tool that we released a while ago, is very popular with customers for capacity testing and load testing. We have TabMon for monitorization, and then
so LogShark, we already talked about it. There's TabLog Viewer for viewing the server and desktop logs. And these are two tools that we talked about today in length.
Yeah, so for all these, that's why this, I think, from the deck, when you get the deck after the conference, these are good because they kind of give you a cheat sheet on what are the requirements for all the tools, what they're best for, where to get more information about them. So here, now is Q&A. Let's jump a little bit over because at the end people are going to stream out and I want to touch just a little bit more. This is our contact information. If you find these tools helpful, you can shoot us an email. We're going to go back to Q&A. It's just going to only 1 second. And it would be really cool if we could travel in time, then you could go to these sessions. But since that's not really possible right now, again, after the Tableau conference, every customer is going to get access to all the sessions. So if you're interested in all of these tools, these are the introductions, the Server 101, and then deep dive into TabJolt, I think. And then there's also server monitoring, TabCMD. So there's a lot of sessions that would be of interest if this one was of interest. And we would also love you to respond to the survey of the session that improves our talk, both the content and the way we presented. And maybe we're going to change something if we're going to do this again next year. And with that, we're going to go back to Q&A. And then, after Q&A, we can hang out here and discuss a little bit more if you want.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Sorry? To go to the last slide?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we can just remain here.
Yes, sir. Oh, the differentiating slide. So
this one?
about all the tools.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Cool.
we can remain on this slide. It doesn't
Yes,
matter
sir.
where we are in the, yes,
The gentleman in the first row.
yes.
Yeah, for the ReplayTool, because you capture the original user, so you can change, once you capture it, you can change the user stimulate using my test account.
Yes. So the question is, if when you capture the traffic, can you run it as another user? Yes. The admin will need to take permission. Will have to create a test account that has access to those wizards and replay it using that account.
And then you say that if you're using the original user, you need to provide the password. How you can provide the password? Is it through the CSV file? You need the CSV file for the password?
Well, the password of the test account, you can put it in your config file. Yeah, that's what we do.
But can you change the authorization of the test account over to the real user? So are you going to provide the admin credentials for the users, test accounts?
Yes, that's what we do. So we usually have an account that has access to these wizards that people in the organization has. Are you able to hear the question? So that's why I'm trying to go as close as possible.
But still, the row-level security-related things will still not work with the manual IDs, right?
Yeah. So as I said, we have the accounts. So the way we run it, I have an account that has access to all of the information that that covers everybody in the organization, and that's how we run the test. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you. Okay, so the question is if there's a way of generating, like on Scout there's a lot of options and on ReplayTool there's a lot of options, but if you want to run this as a schedule task, then you would need to learn all the command line options. And if we would have a way of just generating the command based on the option, we do not have that. In fact, internally we have a web page where you can go and select things and generate the command. But that's a very good feedback, and I think it would be really easy for us to implement, and we're going to do it. Yes?
So I think there's 6 tools.
Yes.
Are we installing 6 tools in one box, or is there any conflict if we install?
You could install all 6 of
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
there's no conflict. Yes, the gentleman in the back. Yes.
Saving the test results of Scout, I would like to establish a performance baseline over time.
Yes.
Schedule Scout, let's say our input in order to have consistent synthetic monitoring. The question is, can I store my test results in a database, or would I have to script that myself?
You would have to script it yourself. But the data is saved as CSV, so I would imagine if you create a table that's very similar to that, would be pretty easy to push in. We didn't want to tie it to a database because then we would need to test with different databases and connectors, and we would need to maybe install like a Postgres. We didn't want to deal with that. Maybe in the future we can do that too. Yes, please.
For ReplayTool, do you have any input to reproduce those sessions beyond what is produced by Logshark? Like by that mean, are you querying the repository to recreate the sessions, or just the output of the Logshark is the input to your program?
Just the output of the Logshark. You could manipulate it. It's a JSON file. You could go copy, with the same structure. You could add whatever you want in there. Yes, sir.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
I noticed Scout doesn't support Active Directory yet.
Yes.
Does ReplayTool support Active Directory?
ReplayTool, the browser supports Active Directory, so it opens it. If it has access, then it goes through. Otherwise, it'll use the username, password, credentials. But the non-browser that still tries to connect with the username and password. but you could use your Active Directory credentials there. And
So if the server is configured for AD, will the local username work with that?
well, it's not local user. It's just a username and password, right? So you could use your Active Directory credentials, and it'll still connect with that. So it should just work. Sorry, I misunderstood, thinking if you're asking about single sign-on, but any of the credentials, it should just work. And even Scout is the same thing. Yes, you could use it. Have we tested? Oh, we have tested with SAML, right?
No. So Scout supports server authentication. When we're gonna support more than that, we're gonna update on the community portal.
Once I enable the Active Directory, I can use
Scout tries to, first thing the Scout goes to the server, goes and tries to log in. And yeah.
once I enable, I can create a local account for the.
Oh, if you can create a local account, then on your test bed, if you have AD in production, and then on your test bed you can configure a server authentication, then you could do that. But for now, we do not support AD in Scout.
wow,
We're going to
so-
be working on that. I know there's a lot of requests for that.
So sorry. So if you use the username and password of the AD account, it'll go through. It'll use that account, and it doesn't have to be an account on the server. It
I
can be
did
any.
not validate that in Scout, so I cannot talk about it. Sorry.
All right.
So I'm still confused. So you're saying that
He's talking about ReplayTool, and
it's only applied on the replay.
for me, I cannot confirm that because I didn't try it.
Scout does work with AD. I mean, I've used it in the past. Just SSO won't actually work with it. So I think that's where a little bit of the confusion is. So SAML won't work, but yeah, I mean, SAML works fine. It's just the SSO authentication, you do have to disable that before you run SAML. So if you are testing a prod and you have SSO, you have to uncheck that box.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So in Scout, it comes with user ID and password, but if it's Active Directory, you don't need to support anything.
So I'm saying that would work. So Yanit is saying that he hasn't tested it with that. We can respond back in the community portal. But I'm saying that it should just work. Use your Active Directory credentials. You would be able to authenticate and use those users.
So my question was hijacked and I get all confused.
Mm-hmm.
Now going back to the replayer, you say it works with Active Directory on when the user signs in to run the Scout, run the replayer, I can use Active Directory authentication.
Yes.
But what about if we change the replace script to run as a different user? Does that support Active Directory as well? Or not?
As a different user with what credentials?
With a different credential?
Yeah, if he has access to the wizards, then yes.
Right, so we look at a log and pull it in, and let's say we pick a user, right? We pick one user for each option, right? But we must run, let's say in our environment we use Active Directory authentication. So that means we cannot, we have to run as that user.
So I can take this a little bit. It's not so much related to the user as the roles and the access. As long as you match the roles that the user has, that user would get access to the same data. And if it has access to the same data, then it would work.
Question there.
Can you share, like, any, outside Tableau, like, if any of your customers are using either of those tools, what that use case is, how they're using this?
So ReplayTool is just released just a few days ago, so we don't have a customer usage, but Scout, Yanit can answer.
So there are customers that are using it outside Tableau. I'm not sure if we're okay to share the name of the customers, but okay, yeah. So a big customer of ours last year, they were having some performance issues with some dashboards, big dashboards that CEO was very interested in. They reach out to us. We helped them run Scout. There were some issues there, especially because of SSO. In the end, we kind of ended up having a list of URLs, and they ran Scout, saw the timing, and then a specialized team in Tableau, performance team, looked into what was going on, why were they getting this poor performance, and provided them with a private build, ran Scout again, and they saw like a 35% or something improvement. And that's how they validated it. That's one. Second, there's customers that are using Scout with a tool called ReplayTool, which is an image comparison tool. It can be on-prem, on cloud, and they do data validation. So they want to make sure that nobody's messing up with the data, so they take a snapshot, and then they run Scout, they upload all the screenshots to the cloud. ReplayTool. They're not related to Tableau in any way, but there's multiple. There's image comparison, and they're very flexible. And yeah, so what they do, this way they want to see if the data underneath changes. Somehow their dashboards are very static, and only some people are allowed to change them, and they want to see when that happens. So these are two scenarios, and there's another big customer that is doing more like regression. They change topology, and or they change something in the data source. They upgrade from SQL to SQL Server, latest version, and they want to see the rendering still works on workbooks. Yes, sorry.
Good. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have more questions, right? So,
Yeah.
the second question I have is, can ReplayTool play different recording scripts in multi-sessions? You know, with the demo, we play one script for 8 sessions. Can we play multiple scripts of more randomness
Oh, you mean run 2 replayer instance or to the server at the same?
instance or in your UI where you can specify multiple scripts to play?
Okay.
So let's say I have 2 sessions for one script, another 2 sessions for another script,
Okay.
another 2 sessions for another script. So that way
Okay.
I have more random results.
Yeah.
Playing the same script.
Yeah. So it's the result of a replay file is a JSON file, right? You could copy from one JSON, put everything in a same JSON file, and as I said, there is another option to change the rate, which basically, although these your original log could have the sessions happening at different days, or you could consolidate it and run it in whatever rate that you want. So you could potentially take multiple runs, multiple replay file, and then consolidate it to a single replay file and run.
Play concurrently, not just sequentially.
You can play it concurrently, yes. So you specify the rate. How many people do you want? How many interactions do you want per minute? You could say that, and that would replay it concurrently.
So it's still playing one script concurrently. It's not multiple scripts concurrently.
So when you say, so replayer runs multiple sessions at the same time, right? If you want multiple scripts running, then you can open multiple instances of replayer and run it, if that's what you want.
Right. That's what, because I don't want to have 10 people clicking on the same button at the same time, but that's not a really realistic performance testing, right? Because most likely they click different buttons,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, not at the exact same button at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's why I asked that question. So, I mean, if the answer is to use multiple players running at the same time, then I can accept that.
Okay.
Right. And the third question I have is
Okay.
that what if data change and the interaction is no longer valid?
That's a good question. So this is one of the, the question is, what if the data changes and the interactions would fail, right? So you will have some marks, and then underneath your data change, and that selection of that mark will not work during the replay. So sorry, I should have mentioned this. your data needs to be somewhat similar, or while looking at the results, you need to keep into account that the selection of usually the selection of the marks is where you might see an error because that's what changes. Otherwise, applying the categorical filters, those things don't change so much, but selecting the marks could fail, and then you just need to eliminate that as a false positive.
Does the script fails or just ignore it?
It'll ignore. So in the end, you'll have all the results showing how many interactions succeeded and then failed. You just need to do an A/B comparison and see how if there are any issues. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hold on, sorry.
Yes. No. So. No. So I said that it's released under MIT license, but we release only the binaries. These tools, some of them are open source, and some of them are released as is. People can have access to them, but we do not, because they are tied to code that can change without having an API underlying. So the question was, if the tool is open source, how come we don't release the sources? Because the sources are tied to frameworks that we use in Tableau and to data that can change without announcing anybody. There's not a contract there.
Yes.
So we want to control all the interactions.
Cool.
Question is, what are the common challenges you see while working with PrePlayer? Like you saw any errors that you encounter? Like one, I believe you already mentioned it, that backend data changes in trouble. Are there any challenges which are more common that you see and you know about that these should be addressed?
Yeah, so the question is, are there known issues with ReplayTool, the challenges? When you say you have a server with a lot of wizards just published and you don't have good enough usage pattern, at that time, replay might not help you so much. If you have your Tableau server with a good number of users interacting with it, then you have a traffic that you can run. Otherwise, you will have to use Scout, which will understand what the contents are and then generate. In fact, that's how sometimes I do the testing. To generate traffic, I use Scout first, and then multiply the traffic, and then simulate a multi-load, multi-user scenario. Yes, sir?
For the replay tool, they have a traffic multiplier
Mm-hmm.
and the traffic rate. What is the difference?
Yeah, so the traffic multiplier is just multiplying the load. If you want 50% more load or twice, it'll so the first instance will be the same traffic, and then the multiplication, those will randomly pick sessions from the initial set and then place it so that you don't want two access going at the same time. The server might just return a cached result, so it randomly puts it in that same timeline, and that is traffic multiplication. Whereas rate it's very similar. Again, so you say, I want 10 user interaction in a minute. So it'll take 10 sessions from this list of sessions that the tool loaded, and it'll place that in the timeline and replay it on that rate.
So the rate times 3, which means like you grab that session 3 times and then run it within a minute or sequentially? Or?
Sorry, I didn't get.
The second one, the multiply rate, traffic rate.
Okay.
Is it like you multiply the session 3 times?
Yes. Well, not in sequence. No. It multiplies and then puts it in the same timeline. So if it is for an hour, you had 100 sessions. You multiply it by 2, then you'll have 200 sessions for running it in the same hour. The other one is the session, the number of sessions that you want per minute. Yes. I'll take that question and then I'll come back to you.
Set this up for dev. Can you massage it if we use multi-way?
Sorry, say it again, sir.
Scout and ReplayTool set up for a dev machine.
Uh-huh.
I want to use the same test to QA prop. Can I easily massage configuration somehow?
Yeah. So it's all in the configuration file, yes, and then you can point it to various server environment and run it, yes. And I run it in the production environment during the non-business hour. Janet, you want to pick?
This is very valid. Can you take the files, all the log files which we generated on the plot, can you point it to the dev and create the same, everything?
So let me, I think we're kind of running out of time. One thing that I can tell you is for Scout discovers the data. So as long as you have the same data, you would get similar results. But I think mostly, I'm not sure how valuable, maybe for regression, user acceptance and regression testing, it would make sense to run it in test, QA, and production and see if there's different errors, but you need to have exactly the same data.
Yeah. So for ReplayTool, you need to take a backup of your Tableau server, and you need to have those contents in whichever environment that you, not the logs. You just need the workbooks, those data sources, and other things. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you.